Hello, and welcome to the movie recap of scary movies, horror movies for June 2024. I watched several movies and I'm going to share them with you. Some of them were hits, some of them were misses, and a couple of them I shut off before I could even finish them. Let's jump right into them. I should say as well that all of these movies I watched on some streaming platform or another or rented from Amazon. First up on the list is Haunting of the Queen Mary. This is a movie that takes place on the real Queen Mary ship. Well, I don't know if it actually was like filmed on the Queen Mary, but it's based on the Queen Mary, which is a real ship in California. You can go to it, you can stay at it, you can investigate it. I don't know how accurate the history of the ship with the movie actually was. This movie, it was 2 hours too long. It wasn't the worst movie I've ever seen. There were a couple times I thought about stopping watching it, but I continued. So the movie is a woman who goes to the ship because she has an idea for a book that she wants to write about the ship. And kind of weird ghostly things happen. There's some flip flopping between present day and the past, and kind of some crazy stuff that happened on the ship in the past. And this movie felt like it was trying to be something it's not. Like it was trying to be a little too deep or a little too like introspective. I don't know. It felt like it was trying too hard. And it wasn't the worst movie ever, like I said, but it definitely was not the most exciting at all. Next movie we're going to talk about is The Tunnel. So this movie takes place in Australia and it follows a news crew as they go to explore tunnels that are underneath the city. And they're exploring this because there's like a drought and the government is talking about tapping into this water source that happens to be underground. But in order to do this, they would need to push out a bunch of people who are living in the tunnels. And so the news crew's like, well, maybe we can make a story of this. And they go to explore it. This is one of your classic, underground tunnel, what is lurking in there type movies. And so I was really hopeful for it. And it's a found footage movie as well, which I love found footage. I love underground cave movies. I love found footage. But this movie really just kind of missed the mark for me, unfortunately. It was like an hour and a half long. The first hour was pretty boring. And I hated they switched between like the footage, the found footage, and then also like documentary interviews. So it's almost like they were doing a documentary about the experience that this news crew had in the tunnels. And it was just really jarring the way that they did it. It wasn't done very well because you'd be watching the found footage clips and you're like, "Oh, you're starting to get into it. You're starting to feel like what maybe they were feeling in the tunnels." And then it would immediately switch to this documentary style interview. And so it just really didn't let you have a chance to kind of connect and really experience what the people were experiencing. And that's one of the fun things with the found footage is it really kind of puts you into it. The movie, like I said, was fairly boring for the first hour. The action happens in the last 30 minutes, but by the time it happens, it almost just feels like too little, too late. If you like found footage movies and you like movies with underground and tunnel elements, you could check it out. But if you miss out on this one, like I don't think you're really missing out on much. Next on the list is a good one. This is one I absolutely recommend. I watched The First Omen. It's the one that just recently came out. I think it maybe came out in June of 2024, or it may have come out in May. But this is a prequel to the 1976 Omen movie. And so it kind of follows a woman who is joining the convent and it follows her story. And it's really just setting up the plot and the beginnings of the original 1976 Omen movie. I loved this movie. Not only was it creepy and paced well, I loved seeing kind of the origin story of the Omen. There were tense moments, there were creepy visuals. It kept my attention the whole time. I didn't feel like I wanted to reach for my phone and scroll social media while watching the movie. I really enjoyed this. And because I watched the first Omen, I decided to watch the original 1976 Omen movie. I haven't seen this in years and years and years. It's been a really long time. So it was kind of like just a nice refresher for me. And this movie is a classic for a reason. It's got really creepy music, really with like the religious tones to it. It's definitely a classic 70s type horror movie with their pacing and their the scenes that they film and the camera angles and everything. So if you're not a fan of the movies from the 70s, you're not really going to like this one, I don't think, but I personally enjoy it. It's a classic for a reason, I think. Then I thought I would continue with the Omen theme and try Omen 2. I have never seen this one. It was 1978, I believe. It was a few years after the original one. And I had to shut this one off. So I'm a sorry. I'm a sorry. I'm sorry if you're fans of this movie or, I just couldn't do it. There were too many characters introduced right off the bat. And I'm like, wait, who's this person? So it was like almost too many storylines and too many people right off the bat. It was just kind of slow to start. Like the whole vibe didn't feel like a horror movie, really. Like it didn't even feel like it was building up. I'm probably going to go back and finish this one because I have hopes that maybe it gets better, but I don't know. It was kind of a no for me. It was too slow, too many characters. The storylines I felt like didn't even have anything to do with Damien or the church. I mean, maybe they're leading up to that somehow, but it was total miss for me. 2021, A House on the Bayou was next up on my list, and I really enjoyed this movie. The premise is a husband and wife and their daughter. They're kind of having some family issues, marital issues, and so they rent a house on the bayou, kind of in the middle of nowhere. And they stop at a general store before they go to the house, and they run into a couple people who live on the bayou. And this movie kind of starts out, you think it's going to be a typical thriller, but there were some twists. And I don't want to say any more than that because I don't want to give it away. But this was a really good movie. It was paced really well. The visuals were cool because I love movies that take place in the South and in Louisiana. So it had a really fun summer vibe as well. And yeah, this is one of those that I can't really say too much because I don't want to give anything away, but it is a really good movie and I definitely recommend it, especially for a fun summer watch. I was really trying to kind of stick with a summer theme for this month, considering it's the first month of summer. And so I watched the movie Night Swim. This movie is about a family, a husband and wife, and a son and daughter who move into a home and it has this new swimming pool. But there is some trauma, some bad events that have taken place in this pool. But it has some great summer elements. I mean, the swimming pool, I think it takes place in the summer because they are swimming. The dad is a former baseball player. I mean, baseball and summer goes hand in hand. This is kind of a spooky, ghostly story. It's a fairly unique story. I feel like it's not one that we necessarily hear all the time. It was a pretty good movie, albeit a little bit cheesy, but it wasn't terrible. It wasn't the best, but it was watchable. And if you have any sort of fear of drowning, this movie will definitely creep you out. The next movie on my list is the worst of them all. I think the movie was about an hour and 20 minutes. I only made it through 30, and I refused to waste any more of my life and my precious moments on this disaster of a film. I always feel bad if I'm bashing a film or a book or something because, somebody did write this, somebody did cast for this, people put work into it. The actors, I hope, are proud of their work. And so I feel really bad like pooing on it because I would feel bad if somebody pooed on my work. But this was just not good, you guys. The movie is a group of friends go to Hawaii because one of them is writing a book on paranormal activity surrounding a resort that closed down on one of Hawaii's islands. So they go there in order to get research for her book. I can't even like okay, the script and the dialogue was terrible. It almost felt like it was written by like Chat GPT or something. There was zero chemistry amongst the cast and the acting just felt very superficial. There were just a lot of like tired tropes and scenes. Like one of the scenes, they approach this waterfall and they're like undressing to get into their bathing suits to go into this waterfall. And it's just like these slow motion scenes of them taking their shirts off and like this forever long scene of them playing in the water. And it's like, okay, what does this even have to do with the movie? Like, okay, like some of those scenes are fine in a movie, but it lasted just way too long. Like we don't need to just see this the whole time. They're walking on this trail and just talking about pointless stuff the whole time. Like I didn't even make it to the point that they got to the resort. That's how bad it was and how much I wanted to shut it off. So if you decide to watch that, good luck. Continuing with the summer theme, I with my cousin, I watched Creepshow 2. I have seen Creepshow 2. I watched it a lot when I was a kid, and actually watching it back, I was like, I probably shouldn't have been watching this movie at the ages that I was watching it because there is some nudity and adult topics that I probably shouldn't have been watching. The main reason I wanted to watch Creepshow 2 again and also show it to my cousin was because I remembered one of the stories. So, Creepshow 2, it's an anthology. There's 3 different stories in the movie, and one of the stories takes place on a lake with this floating raft, and just some craziness happens and people die. And I remember as a kid watching it and being totally creeped out by it. And I also remembered the movie in my mind. I'm like, I know it was like an 80s movie. It's a cult classic for a reason. It's cheesy 80s horror. I didn't remember how cheesy it was. We're watching it and I'm like, this is bad. Like the stories get progressively better as far as storyline and acting and all of that. The first story is really painful to get through. And then the second story is the raft, and then the third story is about a hit and run. And the third story is definitely the best out of all of them. But oh man, I don't even think that we can categorize this as like good cheesy 80s horror. It's kind of bad. It's it's kind of bad. My cousin didn't even finish watching it. I finished watching it on my own because she wanted nothing to do with it. But if you like cheesy, really cheesy 80s horror, definitely check out Creepshow 2. But you know what? I feel like if you do like 80s cheesy horror, you've probably already seen Creepshow 2. Anyway, all right, moving on. The final movie I watched this month is The Uninvited. It takes place during the summer on a lake, so it's got the whole summer vibe thing going. And the movie starts with the main character. She gets released she's been in the hospital for some mental health problems for a year. Her mother died the year prior, and then she was sent to this hospital to work some things out. The movie starts with her getting released and going back home with her dad, where she finds out that her dad is now in a relationship with her mother's nurse because her mother was sick prior to passing away. And this woman was the mom's nurse. And now the nurse and the dad are in a relationship, and the nurse is living at the house. Our main character, I can't remember her name off the top of my head, and her older sister are not pleased. And they're starting to think there's something fishy with mom's death. There's something fishy with this nurse. Things aren't adding up. What's going on? This is yet another one of those movies where I can't say too much because I don't want to give things away. I will just say that the storyline and the plot may not be quite what you think it is. I did really enjoy this movie. It wasn't super creepy. I would categorize it more as like kind of a thriller rather than a horror movie, but there were ghostly elements. That was a good pace, and I really enjoyed it. And that is our June recap of movies. Let me know if you've seen any of these movies and what your opinion is, or let me know if you are going to watch any of these. Again, I would love to hear your thoughts when you do. All right, talk to you later. Bye.